Hey, this is Anthony with Level 1 Gaming, and we are back with another Boomer Blast review. And this week we are taking a look at the brutal and wild FPS with style, Coven. The game entered into early access on Steam on October 24th, and I played it leading up to Halloween. However, no matter the season, this is an excellent first-person shooter that takes inspiration from many fantastic retro shooters from the 90s and the early 2000s. Coming from indie developer Gator Shins with the help of publisher Hellforge Studios. Coven sets you as a woman accused of being a witch. Taking place hundreds of years ago, you are then burnt at the stake. You hear your character yell and scream in pain as the local townspeople stare. All of this happening immediately as you start a new game, as you realize the background on the main menu is your perspective on the stake, waiting to be burnt. This starts the game with a very brutal tone, and it will only get more brutal and violent from there. Perfection for a boomer shooter. The setup is fantastic as you become an all-powerful witch, taking revenge and getting a mix of magic, weapons, and more to enact your vengeance. The early access release comes with the first episode of the game, with a second one confirmed, and a third one a possibility if the game does well enough. I took 10 hours getting through this first episode. I went after as many secrets as I could find, and many I found naturally, with the level design being extremely well-paced and thought out. But I am getting ahead of myself. So, as I said, you get burnt alive, but soon after you find yourself awoken once again. And you crawl your way out, and once again start to walk the land. The atmosphere is dense and thick in this game. Not only the fog and thick trees, but the amazing music and sound effects that bring the world to life. The game also uses colored lighting in a very striking way, with brilliant contrasts of bright and dark colors. If you have an OLED display, I would play this game on it. I used my OLED monitor and tested on my OLED Steam Deck, and it was so beautiful to see some of these scenes in action with such striking color use. Whoever was doing the lighting passes on the levels has outdone themselves time after time. I cannot wait to see these skills at work in the next episode. The graphics have that retro style of the late 1990s and early 2000s, with crunchy textures and animations for the time. None of this detracts from the visuals. It all comes together to create an amazing artistic showcase of Gator Shin's vision for the world of Coven. The sound effects and music are very well done, with everything having a very memorable sound effect, like ammo pickups, spells, and more that end up being burned into your mind for all the right reasons. The level design in Coven is absolutely sublime. I had no problems getting lost or not knowing what I had to do next. Each level is filled with puzzles, secrets, and more that provide you some things to do off the main path. And these secret areas can be quite large, with entire large sections of the level that you will find with special secrets. It's very well thought out and very fun to find them all. There are a total of 10 levels in this first episode that's released in early access. The combat is fun and brutal in every level of the game, and the variety of tools you have at your disposal as you progress through the game are all fun to use. You get the ability to basically use bullet time, slowing down time, allowing you to line up every shot as a headshot and destroy a group of enemies in seconds. After the enemies are downed, you will feast on their flesh to heal you, biting off their heads, legs, arms, and more. You have to aim at the different parts of the body to eat them, and limbs and heads that go flying during combat can still be found and eaten. The mechanic is very reminiscent of the same way you eat humans in the original Aliens vs. Predator game developed by Rebellion back in 1999. It felt just as brutal and crunchy as in that 1999 original, and it was a fun mechanic during each fight, as would always very quickly eat enemies, and you get better and better at it as you play more, making your feasting more efficient, and therefore your health always high. Your weapons of destructions come in many forms. You have traditional guns, such as a pistol and a shotgun, along with melee items like an axe and shield. You will also have various spells you can use, such as magic bolts that deal a good amount of damage, or explosive skulls created from the craniums of those you have left dead. This leaves every level and encounter up to the player to decide how they want to approach combat. There is no stealth, but the variety of guns, melee, and spells means you can either lean into one or the other, depending on your mood, or as you slowly learn, certain tools are more effective at killing certain enemies. The combat, exploration, puzzles, and secrets all left me wanting more. It all flows together really well, and the pacing is so smooth that every PlayStation felt so short, but instead an hour went by like nothing. The levels kept pulling me in to explore more, push forward, and continue on my journey. There are some really amazing parts of the story once you reach the halfway point that I don't want to spoil, but the setting and story takes a turn I didn't expect and really had me excited and thrilled for more. Once I defeated the final boss, the last scene really set my expectations ablaze for the next episode. I cannot wait for more. As with all indie boomer shooters I review that are still in early access, normally I'll review them already because the foundation of the game is solid, bug-free, and support is looking bright. Plus, at Coven's price of $14.99 USD, it is already a compelling pickup just for this first meaty episode. I also don't like leaving indie devs without a spotlight on their early access releases when making sales and getting support is really what you need during that time. I took my time, took screenshots and videos, explored for screenshots, and more, bringing me up to 10 hours. I can guess that focusing on the main path, not really looking for secrets, or immersing yourself, you can complete the first episode in 6 to 8 hours. The game is essentially bug-free. I had one crash early on, but again, I was running OBS and such to record, so it could have had something to do with that. Even so, I didn't experience any other bugs, crashes, or anything else other than that one crash in the first hour of the game. Since launch, the developer has released a few patches and has been busy in the various communities on Discord and more, updating on what is coming next. I'm very confident in this release and hope that sales go well enough that we might see Episode 3 become a reality. With such a solid early access build, I can only see Gatorshins focusing on expanding things given the foundation is so well made. There is some room for improvement. My only main gripes were that the ammo can sometimes be scarce for some weapons, seemingly unnecessarily. And some sound effects are really weak, like the magic bolts, which do great damage. You know, you can shoot them at enemies, but they're so quiet when you're shooting them, and when they impact the enemy that it leaves you, kind of wanting more. I also found that the soundtrack leans a little too much into heavy metal. Don't get me wrong, I love and am fine with those heavy metal tracks. They sound great, but just having some more moody tracks would help the levels build even more immersion. So a nice balance would go a long way. So in conclusion, Coven was an absolute pleasure to play. The pacing, wide open levels, and varied combat made for an experience I never grew tired of and just wanted to keep playing. The graphics, art, and sound come together to create a world that you will get lost in as you take your revenge on the people who burned you alive. There is so much variety to the combats that any player will find their favorite combination of weapon and spell, or even go full shield and melee like I did for stretches of the game. With a solid first episode, Coven is already worth the price of entry, and with a second episode coming, I expect even more amazing levels, twists, turns, and even more tools of destruction. Don't hesitate if you're looking for a great indie first-person shooter to play. Grab Coven today. So my final verdict. Gameplay is a 9, story is a 9, sound is an 8, and graphics a 9. Making that a total of an 8.75 out of 10. And just to sum it up with a couple pros and cons, so some pros. The atmospheric and well-realized world is amazing. There's a fantastic story setup here and an insane last act that really sets up a great episode 2. The brutal first-person combat with various spells, melee weapons, and guns feels and plays great, and I just love eating them all. That mechanic is just so awesome. And some cons. Like I mentioned, ammo can be a bit scarce for some weapons, and I'd like to see some changes there. And some sound effects can be a bit too quiet or not well mixed. So I mentioned the bolt, the magic bolt, and just some of the music, balancing out some music there. Anyways, this has been another Boomer Blast review for Coven this time, and we'll see you next time on the next Boomer Blast review on Level 1 Gaming. This is Anthony. We'll see you next time.